Finance. Joining me on set at this time, we have Mr. David Lee, the Deputy Political Leader of the United National Congress. I know, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
Once again to your studio and to your program.
It's always fun to have you here so we can discuss matters of state. And I'm listening to, once again, to the Minister of Finance. And the night after the media review, and of course, the response by the opposition leader, one of the analysts on one of the other networks was making the point that some people were expecting a little too much out of the media review, making the point that the media review is just that, a media review to see what has happened thus far and where we're going. So in dissecting it, what I gathered from what they stated was that, you know what, this is where we were, this is where we are, and this is the vision as to where we're going. And it seemed as though, based on what she said, is that the so-called pessimists that he made a reference to, they want a destination. No, we're here, we reach, it's finished. How do you respond to such statements that people are expecting too much out of a mid-year review?
Well, again, thank you, Sheldon, for being here, and to your viewers out there. It's always a pleasure. We are going to the completion of literally the nearly 4 years that this government has been in power. So while on Monday, Minister Imber talked about a mid-year review, really reviewing the period from October when he presented his budget on October 1st, 2018, to Monday, which I think was May 13th. And it was an evaluation of that 7 months. But really and truly, it's not only about the 7 months, but it's really about nearly 3.75 months that this government has been in power. And it's really a re-evaluation of their time, because really and truly, during the course of his speech, he played the politics, and he talked about later on in the year they'll be releasing money to do roads and ports and bridges and roads and infrastructure. So it was a political, I would say, a plain election campaign speech in his mid-year review. But what has happened in the last 7 months? If you wanted to analyze the last 7 months of this government's performance from October 1, you would have heard in his mid-year review on Monday, he talked about a recalibration of the oil price.
Prices, yeah.
Right? So he recalibrated the oil price to $60, and the natural gas to $3. But I want to remind your listeners and your viewers out there that on October 1st, 2018, when he presented the budget for 18-19, he calibrated his budget on a $65 oil price.
Oil price, right.
And in January, earlier this year, when just right after the Prime Minister's Mind Your Business presentation, he came to Parliament and he recalibrated it downwards from 65 to 55. Because when he presented his budget sometime in October 2018, right after that, to January, February, March, the oil price went south, went down. And it was on an average basis, when I did my calculation, I don't have it here, it averaged monthly, October, November, December, January, roughly about $53, $54. So he's way off his number of his original price of $65.
But this would have been based on certain trends happening in the sector at that point in time.
Right. The revenue that he was based his budgeted figures on at 65 weren't being met. So he's way off his revenue figures. Then he came January, he recalibrated to $55. And then now he came back on Monday and recalibrated it upwards to $60. So he's playing a numbers game, trying to come up with a budget figure so that when you look on the service, now a budget is just a budget. It's just an approximate numbers of what he envisages. It's an estimate. So he's playing a numbers game to give the impression to the public that his deficit is smaller. So he's playing a numbers game. It's really a balancing figure he's doing. At the end of the day, when the actual numbers are in, when you see the actual numbers, he's always way off his numbers, right? So he's playing he's doing wizardry with his numbers. Now, even his GDP that he announced on Monday, based on CSO, is 1.9. He said for 2018, the last 4 quarters in 2018, and this is based on 2018. So you have the last quarter in 2017, the first 3 quarters in 2018. He says that the economy grew by a GDP of 1.9, CSO numbers. The IMF says 0.3%. So 0.3 to 1.9 is a wide disparity when you're talking about growth in the economy. But I want to say to your viewers out there, when you look around where we are at for the last 12 months, can anyone really say that they have seen any growth in this economy?
Reflective of what he would have stated in Parliament.
All you have seen in the last 12 months especially, a loss of jobs, business closure, and hardship. So there's a disconnect from what the people of reality, of what the people, the citizenry are feeling on a day-to-day basis and what Minister Imbert presented on Monday. And it's no different than when he did it last year at his mid-year review. Last year in 2018, May 2018, he talked about, if you remember, the economy has turned. We can see clearly now, these are the catchphrases, the rain has stopped. And that was in May 2018. And since May 2018 to May 2019, can anyone really say that they have felt any sort of growth, any sort of stability? What we have seen in November was the shutdown of Petrotrin. A debacle, the total destruction of Petrotrin, where over 5,000 individuals of Petrotrin have gone home. And not only that, but the fence line community of Marabella and so forth. You live in Marabella. You can drive through Marabella now at lunchtime, no traffic. I did a walk on Saturday morning in Marabella for a 16-year-old who passed away last year to the hands of a gun. And our walk started at 9 a.m. from Tropical Plaza. And we walked through Marabella Main Road, the southern main road into Marabella, in quick time because there was no traffic.
Let me ask a question. And I'm going to do this in 2 parts. So we entitled that show Monday, Road to Recovery. Right? And I'm analyzing when you're repairing a road, different things happen. You have to corner off traffic. You sometimes have to divert traffic. There would be some discomfort. Sometimes you have to dig up the road, and you have to then now relayer the road before it gets smooth so you can drive freely on it again. That has been the picture the PNM has painted. That listen, in the process of getting back to this place of recovery, whereby we can feel the smooth flow of finances and resources and all of that, there's going to be a season where there's going to be some diversion of traffic, diversion of resources. We're not going to have it as easy. How do you respond to that analogy in terms of what was presented? Because he made the point that someone was saying, 1% is not plenty, but he also made the point, if it was a 1% deficit, they'll have something to say again about that. So how do you respond to that first?
Well, let me put it this way, Sheldon. I think we as an opposition, I as a citizenry and the MP for Pointe-a-Pierre, any recovery, any growth as a citizenry is good for my country and good for everyone.
So 1% is good?
1.9%.
Well, 1.9, sorry, right.
Over 0 is good.
It's good, right.
Because it shows a sign that there is recovery.
Right.
And nothing is wrong in that. Nothing is wrong in that because even though I sit as an opposition member, I'm a citizenry. I'm a businessman. I don't want to see negative growth. Negative growth means more loss of jobs, hardship, business closures. That's what we have been happening. But what we are saying as an opposition, what I'm saying as the MP for Pointe-a-Pierre, we are not surprised when this government today, and you call it smoothing out the road, fixing the road, or whatever the layers that you use. I call it suppression tactics. And I have and it is clear that my take on it is coming to pass, meaning that we were fully aware that the strategy that this government would use was to suppress the country, suppress the people, suppress the and give it this doom and gloom and blame it everything on the last government. And then in the last year before general election, they would have this windfall and do all these great things for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But I think the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the Sidri are more mature, they're more intelligent, they understand what is going on. They can't be, because if you have a growth in 2018 of 1.9%, why was it necessary to shut down Petrotrin? You could have restructured Petrotrin. Nobody's against some sort of restructuring of Petrotrin, you know. And you could have done it on a phase basis. So that why send home 5,000, put 5,000 individuals out on the breadline? And people come to my office. I met with some people just 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, the security officers of Petrotrin who were trained in Petrotrin for a particular type of security. They weren't watchmen. And on November 28, when it was the last day for Petrotrin, they were all sent home. And what happened was a total raid and pilferage of Petrotrin that is going on today. So that why would you have sent home the security division? They should have been your last, if you want to close down the company, they should have been the last set of people that should have been going home, because they're supposed to protect the assets of Petrotrin. They know what it is that they have to do. And who the assets of Petrotrin belong to, it doesn't belong to this government. It belongs to you, I, your citizenry, and so forth.
Right.
So what you saw on Monday was purely semantics by the Minister of Finance. I don't even think he was convinced himself that there's really a turnaround in this country. The construction numbers are down. Manufacturing are down. I talked to my manufacturers, especially someone in the TTMA, and he was alarmed by this picture that this Minister of Finance has painted on Monday, because their numbers are down. They have no incentives for manufacturers. They have not diversified this economy. I mean, and I don't expect this government to diversify the economy overnight, but must have a plan in place going forward for diversification. We cannot continue to depend, as what this minister has been doing for the last literally 3.5 years, depending on an oil price. So once the oil price goes up, he's happy. Once it goes down, well, the economy suffers, the people suffers. And there's nothing in place in the last 3.5 years
to diversify in terms of,
to diversify, even if you work with the manufacturers that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, and give them some incentive to boost manufacturing. And then, so clearly you don't become too dependent on the energy sector. You don't put
which has always been a cause of concern.
And we all talk it, but we really have to have the will to start diversifying the economy. They have not really done anything for agriculture to at least lessen the import bill of foods that we import.
Just to diverge for a minute, because in all honesty, Mr. Lee, all governments, let's say within the last 20 years, would have had this crippling challenge of diversifying the economy. When you look at the budgets, agriculture always gets the least, and they seem to be suffering. Why is it so challenging for any government to really diversify in this area and other areas as well? Because again, we hear the talk all the time, and then for some reason it goes on the back burner again.
I think, Sheldon, I think it's really the will of the particular government of the day. Sometimes you might find that agriculture, and I don't want to use this word that the studio they're in, but it's not sexy enough for ministers to really, to really give it the kind of importance. I mean, we talk about tourism in Trinidad. There's so many different types of tourism.
Has suffered as well.
It's not only traditional sea and sand tourism. I mean, we developed under Kamla Basad-Dicessa, you had the aquatic center, you have the Couva Hospital that was designed for medical tourism, you had the aquatic center, you had all these stadia for sports tourism. So you have to really have a will. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but you must put some resources into it, start it, and really try to birth it and help birth it and make it grow. But it's not, but you must start some sort of diversification. The Prime Minister and this President talk about the Labrador Dry Dock.
Right.
They have been talking about the Library dry dock for the last 2.5 years. To date, they still have not completed the feasibility study in the Library dry dock. They talked about the San Fernando waterfront. You know, to date, nothing has really started on the San, because the San Fernando waterfront was supposed to help. I mean, according to the Prime Minister, with the loss of jobs at Petrotrin, it was supposed to sort of help, maybe cushion that loss of job, loss of employment, and generate some type of employment. Nothing has happened to date. The Prime Minister talked about the fence line community and displacement, that they would have had some sort of incentives put in place. Nothing has been done. So really and truly, you know, and when you look at the priorities of this government, and I really don't like to do it, but when you look at the Toko port, given the times that you're in and the scarcity of revenue, is it not that it is not important, but is it important at this point in time, right? Where you could have moved that money into another source of revenue generation or even diversification away at this point in time that revenues are a bit tight for this country, and really try to give the people hope, right? When you talk about the Valencia to Manzanilla highway, not that it is not important, but maybe the Point Forte highway to San Fernando is more important at this point in time, because you have the industries in Point Forte, and that you have the free movement, and it can generate some sort of activity. So it is really about prioritizing your revenues given the fall in the energy prices and so forth. So really and truly, this is a will, and it's really about prioritizing.
All right, and you are saying that that will exist with the current opposition, in despite, of course, some of the concerns many may have?
Well, I can't speak for the past.
Right.
I can only speak going forward. Because one would have noticed on Monday when the opposition leader rebutted and spoke in the media review, she presented a document. It's called the National Economic Transformation Master Plan for the UNC and when we return to government for 2020 to 2025. It lays out a blueprint that we have in place for the next 5 years from 2020 to 2025. Now, it's a work in progress as anything else. It's a document. I would call it as a business, a strat plan, right? And any strategic plan, you tweak it as you go along to suit the different situations at a point in time. But you must have a plan. You cannot, as a good business individual, running a company or running a business, do not have a strategic plan. So you must have it, and it's designed short-term, medium, and long-term. So we have presented that. She spoke about it on Monday in the media review, and it will be rolled out to the public as the campaign starts to get going.
All right. So before we take a break and we return with some more of our discussion, the Minister of Finance quoted a lot of figures, right? And as he made the point, he says, facts and figures don't lie. However, there are those who will argue that facts may not always be truth, right? However, these figures that the minister would have quoted can be easily verified. And one may think that it would be ludicrous on the part of the Minister of Finance to quote figures where that could come back to bite him. Yeah.
You really don't know this.
I'm asking you because again he quoted figures, and he's always one that stands boldly and says, "Challenge me on it. Challenge me on it." So how do you respond? Because
I'll challenge him by the first one.
Sure, go ahead.
The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, who has been in Trinidad and has a presence in Trinidad and works closely with the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago for over 30-something odd years. Every year they are in Trinidad. They have a presence in Trinidad at all times. This present government has worked with the IMF when they first came into government back in 2015. This present Minister quoted the IMF. The IMF figure for GDP is 0.3%. Minister Imbert's figure is 1.9% GDP. It is way off. In this day and age of technology and information sharing, it cannot be that way off. 0.3% to 1.9% in respect to GDP is a vast, vast difference. So that I would, and I stand here today, and I'm sure I would not be wrong in saying that not in the near distant future, Minister Imbert will come back and adjust that GDP figure that he presented on Monday in the Parliament. I'm positive of that.
You're sure of that?
Positive of that.
All right.
Because that same number of 1.9% GDP was presented on October the 1st in his budget statement, which is there for everyone to see. So it's either Minister Imbert is really a prophet, because to predict in his budget in October 1st, 2018 of 1.9% GDP, and no numbers were in as yet completed, to come back in May 13th and present the same figure of 1.9%, I rest right there. And you look at the IMF figures and the World Bank figures, they're all, yes, they're over 0%. And I'm not about, and it's not about haggling over the numbers. And I come back to say, whether it is 1.1% or 1.9%, you really have to feel we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, should have felt some sort of stimulus, some sort of growth. You know, why we lost jobs in TSTD? Why TSTD sent home over 500 employees? Why Petrotrin sent home all and had to shut down? You know, so one has to ask the question, who is really telling the truth in this country?
Facts, figures, truth. I'm just responding to some messages here quickly. Someone is saying, in terms of Petrotrin, they went home with heavy packages. Of course, that is also one that is very debatable on many sectors as to who went home with heavy packages. But before we answer that one, just to kind of wrap up with the media review, then we're going to touch on Petrotrin again. So moving forward, based on your feedback from your constituents and even people from, because there are some PNM supporters who again are concerned, but there are others who are saying, you know what, it was a great media review, and I know you would have interacted with both UNC and PNM supporters. What is the general feedback on the media review presented by the minister?
It was nothing different presented that gave anybody hope. What the Minister of Finance did, he brought a tax amnesty for 3 months. And you know what that is?
Which really, many people...
You know what that really is? It's really to give this government a oomph, a short, quick revenue-generating measure. That's what tax amnesty has. When they first came into government, they brought a tax amnesty, and they were looking for somewhere about half a billion revenue generating measure. So it's really a quick revenue generating measure by individuals and companies who might have been negligent in filing their taxes. All it avoids them not paying the tax. All it avoids is the penalty of not filing. So if they have outstanding taxes to pay, they will have to pay it, and it will generate a quick cash flow for this government who's really badly off as far as revenue measures. Because last week when at cabinet meeting, right after that day, with the press, and that was just last week, Thursday, 2 days before the media review, when one of the reporters asked Minister Young, who's the Minister of National Security, that a lot of individuals have not gotten paid as yet within his ministry, he was unaware of. So if we really had a turnaround of this country, why would this government be struggling to pay government workers?
If you were to identify, because I always made the point, in every dark space there's a shimmer of light. You just have to find it. Yeah? If you'd identify one positive thing in this media review, what would it be? Or are you not seeing that?
I mean, that's a very difficult question you ask me, to be honest with you. Because I have lived as an individual in Trinidad and Tobago, like yourself. We have lived the last 12 months in Trinidad and Tobago especially, and I have not seen any signs of recovery. Now, I hope we have recovered, but I'm not seeing it. When you look in the malls, you go to Trin City Mall, you have over 50 shops, small businesses that have left the mall.
Several malls, you've seen that.
Several.
Several
when
malls.
You go to Gulf City, same thing. When you go to West Mall, you know, and so on. You look at the rental of buildings up for rent in places that were occupied. It's a scary sign. It's a scary, scary sign. So, and when you look at the price of gas that he pegged, that he recalibrated to $3, you know what's the price of gas today? $2.65. And he recalibrated it to $3. So he's way off his numbers. The price of oil is $61 a barrel today, just $1 above what he recalibrated to $60, but his original budget figure was based on 65. So Minister Imbert is struggling because what has happened is that FDI's, foreign direct investments into this company, is non-existent under this government. So that they're dependent on the price of oil to really, you know, go up very high.
To save us once again.
To save us once again.
The same problem that we've been having for many, many years. And that's what he's been doing.
It's a sort of a Russian roulette game he's playing.
You know what? Light always has a way of finding its way through the smallest of cracks. Yeah, so let's hope that despite all that is happening in our country, that light will find a way. I want to switch our focus to Petrotrin based on this comment that was here. And this is a personal interaction I had with someone, for us to not sugarcoat what was happening in what was a very bitter situation that was brewing into Petrotrin for decades. She was unemployed there, and my wife and I having a conversation with her, and she was at one point in time in charge of a particular desk where she would sign off on salaries and overtime and so forth. And she, just to generalize, she made the point that there were workers coming there claiming 12-hour shifts for 4 months, 7 days a week, and logically not making any kind of sense. And on one particular occasion where a particular guy claimed overtime didn't work, he made somewhere, a particular place he went, which would have been like for about half an hour, he claimed 8 hours. That kind of when he said, well, speak to so-and-so before you. She's like, no, this was done before, I'm not doing that. Making the point that the overtime racket and other things, that it was a real issue at Petrotrin, and hundreds of workers would have basically, pulled the lifeline because of greed. So I'm asking that question to say, does it seem really that far-fetched that a decision was taken to shut down totally, or even amidst the debt that they were in? And this is just one aspect of it. I'm sure there were other areas as well where there was mismanagement. Or do you still believe that restructuring was really the better option, given the rampant corruption that was taking place in Petrotrin? Let's take
use your phrase rampant corruption, and there's no doubt that there was an abuse of overtime, etc., procurement issues and so forth. But that doesn't mean that you have to shut down $1 billion empire. It really talked about the management having the will to do the right thing. Because why would that not happen again? What has changed? Because you shut down Petrotrin and you bring back the same players, the same management people. What has changed? What has really changed under this new structure? And I will tell you, nothing has changed, because they talked about bringing in new systems. I have asked the question in Parliament to the Minister of Energy, tell this country what new systems you have brought in. What new system you have brought in to prevent the issue of the fake oil issues? What system have you put in place to prevent things like that happening? It's the same from my research, my checks, nothing has changed. They shut down the refinery. They said the refinery was a loss-making business, right? They have over 70 international players line up with and put in bids for either lease and sale of the refinery. Now, if the refinery was such a loss-making issue, why would 70 international players line up through this government to purchase or have a chance of purchasing this refinery? These are the questions that we have to ask this government. And the haste that they shut down Petrotrin, why couldn't they have restructured Petrotrin? Now, to answer what your caller about going home with hefty packages, I want to tell that via text or
via messages,
via messaging, that while some people would have gone home with hefty packages, and from my information, the people who would have gone home with hefty packages are the ones that were close to retirement in that 50-year age group to 60. and they got enhanced packages, and plus they would be getting a pension. The people who are suffering out of that 5,000 plus individuals, the majority were under 50.
I think Mr. Roger would have made that point quite often.
So that the young male or female who would have taken out a mortgage, and they might have been in their 30s, a young family, 30s, 40s, they are now struggling to make ends meet. They are now struggling to meet their mortgage payments because they are unemployed, still unemployed. There are some individuals still have not gotten all of their severance, right? And it is really, it is heart-rendering if you really understand, and you meet anyone who is under 50, that 30 to 40, or that 30 to 50 year bracket. Those individuals are scared. I have many of them come to my MP office, and they just are hopeless because they can't get a job. The job market is non-existent, and they're just hoping that whatever little severance they got, that they can ride them through, and they're hoping that this, because the Prime Minister had promised in one of his speeches that he would have worked with the banks to see if some sort of concession would be given to these ex-Petrotrin workers, because they mentioned it in his mid-year review, Minister Imbert, about giving lands, Petrotrin ex-workers priority for lands. But what about those Petrotrin ex-workers who have mortgages and they are struggling to
like the casual and temporary workers and so forth?
Because their bills are still there. They still have to send their children to school, university. They still have their car loans to pay. They still have their mortgage. They still have the electricity bill. They haven't gotten any, and it's a myth when we feel that people at Petrotrin went home with hefty packages. I mean, the top management might have gone home, and then they might have been rehired. Because I asked the question, how many individuals have been hired since the closure of Petrotrin and the restructuring? And the answer back in February was 41. 41 individuals. So that's, even though there's some short-term hiring presently by some private contractors that they would hire workers, not necessarily ex-Petrotrin workers, because I also have information that they really don't want to rehire ex-Petrotrin workers because of the so-called baggage.
You don't know who to trust, basically. And I mean, there is a lot of truth to that, because I know because I had several friends, even relatives, who worked at Petrotrin, and I know one friend of ours, she has a small, business on the side, and she said what she got from Petrotrin, she got a credit card payment. Right. She jokes about that. She got a credit card payment because that's the amount she got. Right. And in her case, she would have not made permanent. She didn't really have, she was permanent, I think 3 years, something like that. So she didn't really have so much to get. I think that's another issue. Those, depending on how long you're permanent for, you wouldn't have had
a lot of them
much
were
to get.
They were not considered permanent, so they went home with literally nothing. A lot of individuals who were on contract with Petrotrin literally had got no severance package.
So we are in the last few minutes before we close off this evening, we are in, I want to call it countdown year. But every year, and I'm looking at what's been happening the last few days, we are living in a very dark era. There's a darkness within. I want to end with talking about this. There's a darkness within the country and within the souls of people right now that is unprecedented compared to other years. So for many people, yes, there's campaigning and there'll be meetings, but politicians have to come really good.
I agree.
Because just as how the Bible says God looks at the heart, the men and women of TNT, they're going to start looking at the heart of politicians, Mr. Lee.
I agree.
Is the UNC ready to expose their heart to the people? Because if people only suspect that anybody, UNC or PNM, coming with any tactic, and they even as much as slip, people will be very unforgiving.
Let me be frank with that statement.
And we're going to close on you being frank with that.
I think the population of Trinidad and Tobago, they're looking for really true transparency and accountability by politicians. I bear my soul here today. I have nothing to hide. I and I agree with the people when they really want politicians to be transparent, communicate with them, communicate with the population,
right.
be accountable. I mean, they put us here in power. This is a transient position, and we owe it to the people of Trinidad and Tobago to be transparent and accountable to the people, and really, truly be transparent and accountable. I fear no one, and I say that because I think that is what I would want as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, true accountability and transparency. And I will say to you, I don't consider myself a politician, but I guess I am.
I know you always say that, yes, but you are.
I don't see it, but I will say to you that, that once I am a part of the United National Congress, I will ensure that there's a transparency and accountability within my party as deputy political leader.
All right, so on that note, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program this afternoon. We are in a season whereby the country is in dire need of rebuilding. We're going to close off just the last couple minutes with a song that speaks about how beautiful Trinidad and Tobago is. And I do hope at the end of it, whether what side you support, that we can all work together for the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Lee, always indeed a pleasure.
Sure.
God's blessings to you, and we will keep in touch.